Imagine a city with no cars, no roads, electric airplanes, robot deliveries, and vertical avenues. Welcome to The Line, Saudi Arabia's $500 billion civilizational bet on the future. Hey, I'm Steve, this is Gigaprojects, and welcome to Getting Around in Taco Town, your essential guide to the wild mobility plans of The Line and their real-world challenges. Ever tried getting a week's groceries without a car? Or moving a grand piano to the 47th floor without a crane? Let's dig into those everyday headaches that Neom seems to have glossed over.
Please join me in welcoming Denis Hickey, Chief Development Officer of Neom. Welcome, Denis, the stage is yours.
What you're seeing here is Hickey in his element, pitching the line to lure what he calls pioneers to live and work in the line. We've compiled key moments from Hickey's presentations, showing you how they envision getting around.
And so I just want to take you on a journey as to why and what we're trying to achieve. We don't have all the answers, but we're working through that.
We'll plug the gaps with our commentary and real-world tests. Let's dive in.
It is 170 kilometres long. Its 9 million population is the target date. It will be built in phases, and phase 1 will be centred around the hidden marina. And we will launch phase 1 to the world in 2005 when we have more detail. But it's built in phases, and as you can see on these modules, it's 500 metres high, constant, and as the ground rises, the structure becomes smaller as it disappears into the mountain and comes out at the top.
Hold on, Neom quietly admits that geography limits the line to 108 kilometers. That's right, the revolutionary city just lost 62 kilometers. What is he saying? What are these phases? Well, think of it like a startup. They have a big vision, that's phase 3. A minimum viable product for launch, that's phase 1. It's currently tied to the 2034 World Cup. Phase 2 is post-World Cup. And phase 3, the big one, that's the final 170 kilometer dream. That's maybe 100 years from now, or maybe never.
And so we're doing all of the excavation, and we're actually putting the piles in the ground. We're due to start pouring the foundations of the first phase of the line, and then we'll start to become vertical later this year.
Hear that? That's a bold promise. Vertical construction and apartment sales starting this year. Now about the excavation. This is the Giza Plateau. You probably recognize it, the big pyramids in Egypt. The 170 million cubic meters they've dug out would pack the plateau with 65 pyramids. That is an incredible amount of dirt moved. We'll see in our next video if those timelines are realistic, especially when we dig into the financial realities. For now, let's first understand what else Neom is promising.
The line is not a building. It is a city, and it's a city framework. And the grid system of Manhattan is what we've used for the foundation of the line. Instead of being 3 kilometres wide, we're 1.2 kilometres wide. But then we fold the city up, and it becomes 500 in the air, 200 at the base. And you create two blades that look into each other and form a canyon in the middle, and on the outside you look out. When you get into the line, you will have 5th Avenue at ground level, 6th Avenue at 150 metres in the air, 7th Avenue at 250, 8th Avenue at 350, and so forth. Those avenues are what we call primary decks. The primary deck is 16 metres thick. 16 metres. Inside that primary deck, we house all our transport, infrastructure, and everything sits in that primary deck. On top of that primary deck is effectively a boulevard, and they sit either side. Those boulevards run for kilometres long, and they're roughly 50 metres wide. And so those boulevards carry the transport, and we'll talk about the logistics. But you move along the blue corridors in the city. They become big boulevards, and you use your vertical rapid transportation that kind of sits in as the red. So you will move around the line in the same grid structure you move around New York City.
This stuff is cool as hell. Come on, dudes, I want to live in a taco of a city. Most people love cities and everyone loves tacos. So a taco city is the best of both worlds. That's the vibe Neom's chasing with the line. A full-on rebellion against the urban sprawl we've been sold as normal. They're torching the old playbook, going vertical to start fresh. But is it fresh, feasible, or FUBAR? Imagine this, you've scored a job at the line. Become one of Neom's brave pioneers, they say. Great, cutting-edge tech, futuristic vibes, but then you read the fine print in the mobility section where Hickey drops this bombshell.
And then we had to hit these criteria. The first thing we had to do was to basically have a city that has no cars.
You go on Google Earth, you look at the line with the marina around it, and imagine the parking lots of Disney World for 100,000 cars around it. So this is never going to happen within sight of the line.
I'm officially in Neom, and let me tell you what I'm seeing so far. Trucks, trucks, trucks. Dump trucks, cargo trucks.
Johnny Harris recently visited Neom, and he perfectly captured what any visitor would say. And now look what he did for fun.
Wow, this car can go everywhere.
Tearing through the dunes and having the time of his life. And while he's enjoying that desert joyride, you might be wondering, how do I get around without my trusty SUV? Michel Ladrak, Neom's mobility guru, lays it out plain and simple.
Individual car ownership is hardly justifiable, right?
Translation, owning a car in Neom is like chewing gum in Singapore. It's socially unacceptable. It's criminally uncool. Basically, a gateway drug to parking tickets in a city with no parking. What's more, the line is in the middle of nowhere. The nearest supermarket is a 2-hour drive away. And then you imagine grocery shopping on Camelback, and suddenly you're on Tatooine. No sane person signs up for galactic backwater duty, right? Unless Neom's got a trick up its sleeve. Uncle Owen's land speeder reimagined for water. Enter the Seaglider. This electric badass starts as a boat, then rises smoothly onto hydrofoils before finally taking off like an airplane, skimming just above the waves at 300 kilometers an hour, sipping less juice than a Cybertruck. The real point of this is connecting Neom to its regional neighbors, Egypt and hopefully Israel, creating a Red Sea innovation and logistics hub. Imagine popping over to Hurghada for a shopping trip, Sharm el-Sheikh, Aqaba's nightlife. Or flip it, tourists from those spots are now eyeing Neom like a shiny new toy. The line's got the chandelier, a stadium, and other anchor assets straight out of a sci-fi flick, making it a destination worth the Seaglider trip. But hang on. Back on land, the core promise, or maybe the core constraint, is still no cars. Or is it?
That doesn't always mean that you can't drive a car, but when you drive a car, maybe we should share that car with others.
So it's less no cars ever and more no cars cluttering up the view of our shiny vertical city. But I just wonder how many pioneers will accept trading their SUVs for shared travel pods and communal dune bashing. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Yeah, no, I didn't think so. Let's say you've accepted the job, red flags aside. How do you even get to your new car-free life? Well, let's hear it from the chief himself.
So if you are going to try and build a framework for a city that has no cars, then you need to have the world's best mobility system from the get-go. And so I'll just take you through how this works. So there are currently 6 layers of mobility through the line. We start off with high-speed rail, general mass transit, vertical, elevated, and go through. I'll take you through each one of these. So what we end up with our high-speed rail. The high-speed rail station sits under here, buried underground. It's like Grand Central Station. It's a big terminal. This is our central terminal that feeds the city, and that connects up into the airports. That will connect up to Neom International Airport and to Neom Bay Airport, as also as our freight lines. But that becomes the high-speed rail, and you will be able to get, when finished, from here to Neom International Airport within 25 minutes.
World's best mobility system. All right, maybe. But from the get-go? Seriously? This is the high-speed rail Hickey was talking about. Now, look at this tunnel. According to the elevation profile, the train enters it at 460 meters and exits it at 1,080 meters. That is a 620-meter climb and would be a Guinness World Record. A normal train could do that, but climbing a mountain at 300 kilometers per hour? That's ambitious. But still better than the original plan, because originally they actually fell for Elon's Hyperloop, a dream that never worked, like his Mars colonies, or his robo-taxis by 2020, or a more competent US government by chainsaw.
Overlaying that, we put what's called a GMT, General Mass Transit. Again, they run beside the line, not under the line, they run beside it. And these stations are roughly every 1.5 kilometres to 2 kilometres. And they become your general mass transit. So if you want to go somewhere, you will drop down, get to a GMT, and go to whatever station you need to go to along the line.
Neom is currently building 250-kilometer metro lines, the spine and the connector. So why is Hickey talking overground GMT and underground high-speed rail? If you build at the same time, you build side by side. Unless maybe Neom is keeping their Hyperloop dreams alive? By pushing construction of Neom International Airport to Phase 2, they're buying some time to sort out the high-speed rail, and maybe keep that Hyperloop vision flickering. That solves the tunnel problem, I guess, and hey, they still get their Guinness World Record. Now, the line obviously is going to want smart, funny, talented people just like you to move in. And I know, being the talented person you are, you're wondering, how do I move into the line with my beloved grand piano? Well, don't worry, Neom's thought of everything, even your unnecessarily large musical instrument. Here's a step-by-step process. You ship your grand piano from the Steinway artisans in Hamburg, Germany, to the port at Oxagon. That's the floating octagon city nearby. Your piano is then loaded onto a freight train to the line. At the line's central terminal, your piano transfers to an autonomous freight pod. Essentially, it's a robot designed to haul your Steinway. We've already talked about getting there, but now let's hear what Hickey has to say about getting around inside.
The third mode of transport is our rapid vertical transportation. These are not elevators, these are rapid transportation. These are massive cores that house massive goods and people mobility. They only stop at the primary decks, which I'll tell in a minute. One talks about, well, how can you go 500 metres? They're effectively taking you to the corners of each grid. And we've done all the modelling, and the time to move up and through the city still meets our 5-minute walk criteria. So the mobility and access and the network of all of this actually kind of comes together and stands up on all the modelling.
Those massive cores that Hickey was talking about, on the outside, they're giant steel pillars holding up the primary decks, but on the inside, they house their vertical transport systems. See those little thin lines tracing alongside the pillars? Those are the express glass feeder elevators which whisk you from your primary deck up to your apartment level. And from a structural standpoint, this is a stroke of engineering genius. But as we see next, these vertical cores spaced every 100 meters are about to mess up horizontal mobility big time.
We then have what's called our horizontal mobility. I talked before, this is about our primary deck. In this yellow line, you've got to think about inside all of that is all of your infrastructure. So in there will be light rail. And it won't be a heavy, it'll be done by magnet and all different types of things, but it is a loop system that loops around at height. So if you want to go somewhere, you literally walk to this deck, there's a train station, and you catch that light rail across and get off at any point, and they stop every 150 metres. It's just a light rail stop. That loops around, goes around in a circle. At this deck, all of the decks, they have a loop system, so you've got all sideways mobility inside the line, inside all of these primary decks. On top of the primary deck is the boulevard where all the public transportation, micromobility and everything works.
This is a stacked level view of the line. The fourth level will be the main mobility deck because the chandelier sort of splits everything of the line into two halves. On each side, there are 22 cores. Logically, tram stops should be at every core. So why is Hickey pitching 150-meter stops? Okay, so let's just see, how long would it take to travel end to end with stops every 100 meters, every 150 meters, or every 200 meters? Yeah, stopping every 100 meters would be way too slow. To increase travel speed, you're gonna have to make people walk a bit, and as we'll see later, faster walking is the key to getting around within the line. Speaking of getting around, let's track that grand piano delivery. At the line's Grand Central Station, the piano is transferred into a trailer drone. It then enters a freight elevator big enough to fit a semi-trailer. Yes, they build elevators for semi-trailers. The trailer drone travels 400 meters through the second primary deck's travel corridor. See that orange place? That's your new single-family bungalow, halfway up the line. Ocean view, minimalist chic, and soon to be home to a concert grand. So you start warming up your fingers to play Binary Sunset on a Steinway. As from the primary deck, the piano just needs one final scenic hop, transferring to one of those express glass feeder elevators. Finally, it arrives at your door like clockwork. No stairs, no sweaty movers, no tipping required. Though, well, I'm not sure if it'll fit through your door, or if you'll have to fly in a piano tuner from halfway around the world. But, they got it from Hamburg to your door, so figure it out.
We then add that micromobility that really sits on top. And as you can see here, we create bus lanes, pedestrian lanes, walk lanes, mixed with retail, mixed with residential, mixed with everything. And it becomes like any city boulevard, and it'll have landscapes, etc. come through. And then finally, you have pedestrian. And then we've got pedestrian access. So it basically also goes crossways and through the city in terms of linking up both sideways and in between the primary decks. So all of those come together to form a network of mobility that has basically never been seen before in terms of this.
See all those escalators and travelators in their recent renders? By layering mobility, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, Neom wants to increase the radius of where you can get within 5 minutes. And that's where micromobility, along with the travelators and escalators, comes in. For those quick hops to the cafe, the impromptu detour to a shop, the sheer freedom of zipping around on your own terms. Neom seems to be acknowledging this.
I often say people don't like to wait and people don't like to rush, which means that if we bring all these different modes together, we need to make sure that it's absolutely a seamless experience.
And what's more seamless than a robot delivering your grand piano while you sip Moroccan mint tea on your 47th floor terrace? Now for the burning question of how do I get my groceries without a car trunk to fill? Okay, let's see how long this 5-minute city grocery run actually takes, with a scooter and with public transport. Our bungalow is over here in District 6, while the Saudi version of Walmart, Carrefour, is over here in District 2. Ready, set, go. 1. You walk or scooter to the feeder elevator and up we go. 2. Vertical rapid transport, 1 stop. 3. You zip across to the other side. 4. You cross the blade. 5. 2 more stops down on vertical transport and you park the scooter. And 6. Carrefour, finally. But the 5-minute city? Nah. Not when the chandelier's dazzling nonsense adds 5 minutes before you can even start walking. But the real test, according to urban planners, is the 15-minute city. And even across Taco Town, Neom passes that test pretty easily. So what's next? You got there, so you shop till you drop. You even buy that 100-inch TV you've been eyeing. Your purchases are transferred down to the service layer of the primary deck, where they are loaded onto the same autonomous freight system that handled your grand piano. Or, if you're feeling hands-on, roll your cart to the mobility layer and hop onto one of the passenger pods. But either way, Neom's solution to no car ownership is more cars. They're just shared, autonomous, and stored in vast underground garages. But those cars are more robots on wheels. We're not talking sci-fi here. Neuro's delivering groceries now. Zoox has been doing robo-taxis today. Einride and Udelv are hauling freight already. These aren't sci-fi prototypes, they're current-gen delivery bots. But Neom, being Neom, isn't just buying bots. No, they want a piece of the action. So they partnered up with Pony.ai, a $100 million joint venture, to set up a regional R&D and manufacturing center inside Neom. So they're going to build their own robot army. And you, pioneer, you will be the guinea pig testing it. What could go wrong? Okay, let's just imagine that robot army in action. Neom seems to think there's going to be about 60,000 pioneers like yourself in the section of the line that they're going to make. Now, think what that means for deliveries. At peak hour, Carrefour can handle about 500 people per hour. On top of all those deliveries, let's imagine it's Friday night and you also want to get a pizza. and you and about 10,000 of your friends are thinking the same thing. That's going to be madness. Imagine those primary decks, packed with robo-taxis, thousands across the line, all delivering groceries simultaneously. Freight elevators jammed with bots honking in protest, yes, they honk. Tunnels gridlocked, a 3-bot pileup in Corridor 7 with your TV stuck in the middle somehow, ETA climbing into next week. Welcome to Rush Hour, Robot Edition. Maybe we've been thinking ground level when we should have been looking up. You remember when Domino's went viral with these like pizza dropping drones and dudes in frickin' jetpacks? What if the line's autonomous army is about flying taxis and drone swarms and VTOLs, which is vertical takeoff and landing for the non-nerds who are listening to this, and they're all zipping through dedicated air lanes? Think about it. No traffic jams in the sky, no elevator waits, no 3-bot pileup in Corridor 7, just the whir of rotors and your groceries landing on the balcony and the occasional Geronimo as someone decides to base jump to work. No. I think that's a little wild even for Neom. Let's go back to reality, or whatever Neom's version of reality is. So there you have it, friends, the complete guide to living your best life in humanity's most ambitious and controversial taco-shaped urban experiment. We've been roasting the lines robot army and vertical madness, but still, this is the most ambitious, most expensive, and most beautifully broken mobility concept on the planet. Let's not forget what's really happening here. Neom is essentially a VC, with the line being their Series A $500 billion change the world startup. And you know what VCs do? They make bets. Now, some of these bets are moonshots, like peace with Israel. Some are quick wins, like the Seaglider, and some are strategic long-term, like we team up with Pony.ai because China, not America, is going to win the mobility wars, and the Chinese just offered us a way to wean off our dependency from oil. But the line is MBS's biggest bet. If it succeeds, he's the next Steve Jobs. Not Elon Musk, because Steve Jobs actually delivered what he promised. But if it's stalled, it's another King Abdullah economic city. You know that $100 billion city in Saudi Arabia that's 97% empty? What you've just seen was really just Neom's pitch to get the Saudi Public Investment Fund to sign off on what's going to be built in phase 1. The number the PIF will announce later this year isn't just a budget, it's a deadline. 2030 if they're generous, 2040 if they're cautious, and 2050 if they're honest about the problems that they're facing. And that's exactly what the next video in this series is going to be about. How much money will come through, and what will be the minimum viable city. Will it be a gleaming vertical marvel, or just enough to save face for the 2034 World Cup? Stay tuned, because our next video will spill the beans on that number, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. As always, I am Steve. This is Gigaprojects. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you in part 2. Now I'm going to go eat some tacos.